I'm John Batchelor. This is the John Batchelor Show. Tomorrowland, one of my favorite exhibits at Disneyland that I never visited as a child. I used to watch television of Disneyland in California. When I finally got to Disney World in Florida with my children, I didn't go to Tomorrowland because it was Yesterdayland. So I'm reintroducing Tomorrowland with my friend Charles Pellegrino, who is the co-author of a new book about Maglev technology. StarTram is the focus in Charlie's book, his work with his colleagues, that's coming out soon. However, in learning about Maglev, and I'll tell you about it in just a moment, this is Tomorrowland, this is futurism. I suddenly see that Elon Musk, who is a man who knows how to make money, from PayPal to SpaceX to Tesla Model S, he is talking about a program that looks very much like Maglev. I'm not sure. It's suggesting that we could build a rail tram that would travel from LA to New York City at 4,000 miles per hour. Charlie, a very good evening to you. I sent you the piece. It's from Industry Tap News, and it suggests that it's possible to build what looks like a monorail that would go under the ground or above the ground at great speeds using Maglev technology. First of all, what is Maglev technology? Why is it superior to what we have now?
It's basically magnetic levitation, so you're not using wheels that are causing friction, as with the high-speed bullet trains that take a lot of wear and tear. They're very, very expensive, and the real technology is getting warmer superconducting magnets and, of course, being able to build the mass-produce the tunnel systems. So theoretically, you could have maglev trains that would be traveling around the world at speeds of 4,000 miles an hour or even higher. So, I mean, it's something we've all been looking at for many years. In fact, years ago we looked at you could have a global system with a lot of it traveling under the water, and since you don't have very high accelerations, you can go up to whatever speed you want, and even be traveling at a point where you're tracing the curve of the Earth under the Atlantic, and you're actually getting a centrifugal force out towards space, and within this vacuum tube tunnel, the train would actually be traveling upside down.
Charlie, would we put these trains or trams or loop vehicles, would we put them underground, or would they be on the surface?
It would be easier if you could have the tracks on the surface. For getting overseas, you could actually have it below the sea surface, not very deep below the sea surface. And there were ways that were being looked at in the 1980s of actually growing the tunnels.
So this is technology that's been available for some time. It's present now, just like the Maglev technology for launching into low Earth orbit. All the boxes are on the shelf.
Right. These are things that if we could build them now, it's just a matter of building it. It's technology, even the evacuated tube. I believe the very first subway train in New York City, in the northern part of New York City, was actually an evacuated tube, just like the tubes that mail used to be sent through. And the train had a vacuum in front of it, pulling it along, and they're pressing behind it.
The advantages here of speed, of course, would it be able to use move freight? It could move anything. There's no limitation to the amount of mass that it can move from coast to coast at these speeds?
Right. There is no limitation to that. I don't know how long it will be until it's really practical building these very long tunnels. Years ago, the one threat we saw to the whole system wasn't so much the technology as how vulnerable the technology could be to a terrorist blowing up the tunnel and just destroying a large part of the system very easily.
Let me go through this carefully now.
Different people than we are.
We have Grand Central Station, okay, and the train emerges, or the tram, whatever it's called, in Grand Central Station. You get on like you're getting on a train, and it accelerates at a gradual speed so that within 100 or 150 miles of New York, you're traveling 1,000 miles an hour, and then that increases so that you could travel across the country in about 2 hours. Is that practical?
Yes, so we were looking at across the country in about 2 hours. One thing that came up, yes, it would be practical looking at London to New York in 1 hour and 15 minutes. And as with
and why aren't we building? And that'd be cheap transportation too, because the Maglev doesn't require the kind of oil and commitment and diesel fuel and aircraft fuel that we need now. You don't need airports. You don't need the transportation to airports. The trains would come into the central hub. So why haven't they gone ahead, Charlie? Is there a practical consideration? Are the Rockies a problem?
The Rockies would be a problem. There are ways around that. It's the practical consideration is building thousands of miles of evacuated tube. Now, the thing that...
Is that different than a tunnel? I mean, what would
it would be a tunnel, but without air in it. And I think from the things that he's let out, he'll be announcing more about it on August 12th of this year.
This is Elon Musk of Tesla and SpaceX. Yes.
And he's talking about somewhat like a hybrid between a maglev and an air hockey table. So he might be simplifying the system in some way by having where it's a maglev, but it also has air pushing behind it for at least part of the whole process.
And the concept is to build not just one tunnel, but a number of tunnels. So it'd be like rebuilding the national railroad system on the surface. We'd build it underground, or what would it be? Cut and cover would also work, right, Charlie? As long as we seal the
elevated tubes. Musk is pointing out where when you compare to high-speed train, we're looking at about $130 billion to build the train from Boston to Washington. It's incredibly expensive, and so the system that Musk is talking about will actually be far, far cheaper than that. In fact, the launch system version of it...
Right. We'll mention the launch system version. You elevate the Maglev tube, and you elevate it on a mountainside, and that launches into low Earth orbit.
Right, and at $50 or under per pound to low Earth orbit, compared to over $10,000 a pound for things like the space shuttle when it was operating.
Charlie, were you surprised, given that you've got a book coming out with your colleagues about Maglev, to see Elon Musk advancing this? All of a sudden, it seems coincidental that two of you coast-to-coast loopy thinkers are going for Hyperloop or Maglev all of a sudden. Has this been coming for some time?
It might be something that it's just the right time for it, and I think all of us who are looking at it, we're all on the same side, and he's, of course, been working with rockets and so on, so this will all come together because Musk and Cameron and Branson, they're all looking at things like asteroid mining, and it would be nice to get people out there.
Which needs Maglev. Asteroid mining needs Maglev because it cuts down the expense for lifting cargo into space. All right.
Right. You can launch anything you want.
Hyperloop, it will be introduced in August. Is that correct, Charlie? August?
August 12th, yes.
Elon Musk of SpaceX and Tesla, a man who knows how to do PR. He calls it the Hyperloop system. Coast to coast, 4,000 miles per hour. I could be in Los Angeles. I was already there. Charlie Pellegrino, my colleague, my futurist, Tomorrowland. I'm John Batchelor.